back, everyone. I'm here today with Ivan Moretha of Design 2147. We are going to talk about where the DOB is today compared to 1987 when we started design. So we're coming up on our 37th year anniversary. So I've asked Ivan to come in and give us a little bit of an update on where the building department was, where we are today. And I'm proud to say, Ivan, that you've been here for that entire duration. So thank you for your service to design. Thank you to service to our clients. So welcome aboard, Ivan.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
Great. So here we are. Post-COVID, went from doing plan exams in person to now being more on a virtual model. So tell us a little bit about what happened after COVID and what the DOB put in place to start to streamline the plan examination process, as well as the permit process, as well as the TCO and C of O process.
So, before when we started this whole process with the building department filing, if you recall, we used to have to actually bring paper copies of applications. That was pre-1989. You actually had to have duplicates, copies, and an original stamped and
Signed.
For those that don't, signed, sealed by everybody. And for those who don't remember, it was like carbon copy. You actually used a carbon sheet, and it was triplicates of every single piece of paper. Pretty much the same documents that we have now. They haven't really changed the names, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
It's Schedule A, for example, for those that know the industries, it was called a Schedule A back then, and it had the same information we have now, but it was actual typewritten pieces of paper.
Yeah.
And even way prior to that.
I remember those nights.
Yeah.
Sitting upstairs here at Design at Diamond Street and sitting there with the carbon paper and typing away and hoping we didn't make a mistake and then having to exit out because you couldn't use the whiteout.
You couldn't use whiteout. It's exactly.
We were in the digital age where we used to have to dial in. We had one station. We used to dial in through a phone line. You type in two things, and we'd have a small computer station with that with the printer with all the holes on the end, and then you'd get kicked out, and you'd have to start all over. And I remember being here late at night, hoping that at the end of the night there was less traffic on the internet and less traffic on the modem, so that we could actually do the research we needed.
Yeah, that's when we have to use the old BIS system that was there, and also we had to submit all the documents, not only hard copy paperwork, but also in a floppy disk.
Right.
We had to download everything into that and submit it to the building department for them to process it. Basically doing their clerical work ahead of time.
Correct.
But yet still have to submit the signed documents to the building department. And now you move forward to the DOB Now system, which is pretty much in the cloud. Everything is done through your station in the computer. It's gotten rid of all that paperwork.
Right. So it's basically allowed for the digital age of processing applications, permits, and C of Os through the DOB Now system. We do have some overlap between what we've collected in the BIS system for the last almost 30 years versus the new system. So we're working really within two systems right now at the building department. We still use the BIS system for the applications that remain open, and we're still using the DOB Now system for the new applications. Is that a fair statement?
No, absolutely is. And also one of the major changes that the industry as a whole has seen is the amount of printing that takes place when it comes to drawings. Before, you had to print every single sheet.
Oh, without a doubt.
In 3 copies. And I remember rolling in a...
with luggage.
Sets of drawings, and then only to sit there and have the examiner sign and seal every single
Hundreds
page.
of plans.
It's
took a lot of time.
Whereas now everything is done basically via PDF. And
correct, and
and
our
not a
office
signature.
obviously has evolved in that. We used to have a room just with plans in it, and it was tremendous. And we'd have to sort it, organize it, and nowadays it's a click of a button. So there's pros and cons. I mean, there's definitely the evolution of the PDF and the plans, where things are stored better. There's better access for the public. We can see things in a better place. Whereas years ago, we'd have to go down. They'd have to go in the records room. Half the time, they couldn't find the stuff. So it's really evolved into, I believe, in my opinion, I think that the DOB has done a really great job with it in terms of the transparency. Our clients can see what's going on. We can see what's going on. The record keeping is a lot better because it is in the cloud, and we can access things for the history of that building compared to years ago where everything was paper and it was difficult to locate what you were looking for when you were, ready to file an alteration or a repair.
Yeah, and also there's obviously there's some growing pains. Whenever you go through changes in procedures, there's definitely some growing pains that you have. And if you remember when we started in '89 through the BIS system at the time, there was about two or three different different systems within the same program, and it took
Meaning
about
that, it evolved.
it evolved, and
Right, it's organic. It's
and
the
it-
platform has to change with what the building department is trying to do.
correct, and it took about, I would say, 4 or 5 years for us to get at a level where there was a sense of comfort and familiarity between us, the building department, and there
And
was
the applicants.
and the applicants, and that's the struggle that we're having right now with DOB Now, the evolution of that program, the ongoing changes. There's always constant changes within the building code guidelines and
Oh,
requirements.
and in all fairness to the building department, due to COVID, they had to release the program ahead of schedule because no one could go do plan exams. The building department still had to exist. Applications still needed to be filed. They needed to be approved. So we went from a digital system with in-person plan examinations, where now we are able to have telecoms for plan examinations. We're able to have Zoom meetings for plan examinations. And we've basically, because of COVID, that was fast-tracked so that the building department could stay up and running, and the public can still file their plans and get things done during the shutdown. So, kudos to them, because I think they did a really great job to pivot on that at a time
Yeah.
when it was just a very, very difficult time to keep projects running. Remember, the world was shut down, but hospitals still had to run. People had to continue to build certain types of projects. They just couldn't stop. So there were, projects that did remain open, and the building department did create a system to allow that. So,
what they
in my
called-
opinion, I think they did a really great job with that.
Yes, what they I remember they called them essential projects.
Yeah, essential
and
projects,
that
correct.
needed to continue to progress. Schools,
Right,
fire department,
hospitals,
houses that were,
Yeah,
had
nursing
quite-
homes, all healthcare, as well as other types of government projects and things like that. So although the world stopped for that period of time, the building department did recognize it and have a way to implement this system. And here we are, almost 2 years later, with the system that's in place. And it's definitely streamlined, but everything has its pros and cons. But from the streamlining end, we're able to do everything digitally, pass it around to the applicants and the owners for their signatures, and cut down on the amount of lost time of sending documents around and waiting for things to come back signed. And like you said, using carbon paper back in the day to so in essence, we're giving away our age, Ivan. We're kind of like the dinosaurs now of the building department. But by
senior
being
members.
right, by being the senior members, we also means we have a lot of experience. So tell us about what you believe the pros are to the new system.
Well, the pros to the new system is that flexibility that you have to actually be, in my opinion, in the office or in some cases at home, processing your documentation, not having to stand in lines. Remember those days when I had to go to the building department at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, sometimes prior to that, to sign up on the list, to just stand on the line outside, hoping to get in so I'd be able to get a slot to see a
Right, and that's
exam or
pretty
something.
much has been eliminated now.
For the most part, yeah. it has been.
I don't think of any situations where we have staff members doing that anymore. Thank God. And going back to that, it was also part of that was the plan examination. So, right now you can have a plan examination at a set time. It could be with a Zoom. You're both the architect, the owner, the expediter, and the plan examiner. All of us could join the meeting together, which I think is a huge plus. I think that there's um, by having this transparency exists, that all parties that are in the project, engineers, architects, owners reps, owners, expedite, everybody's together. And when you meet with the building department, there's definitely great communication. Um,
Much better in that respect, and there's an immediate understanding where your project's at.
Correct, correct. Um, and going forward now, we talk about not only the plan examination side, but let's talk about the inspection side. So they have a system now where via an email you can upload your request for an inspection. They prompt it, put it into the system, and you're given a window. And it seems to be very efficient compared to the old days of calling on the phone and waiting. And again, our longevity in this industry tells us where we are today. So, evolution is part of every city, and the building department evolving is part of the fabric of New York City, that we can
Yeah.
cut down on the inspection time and not wait weeks and weeks out. So tell me what you think about that. What do you think that has the DOB now in terms of their inspection cycle helping the city to get the inspectors out to the sites quicker and more organized?
Yeah, I'm not dealing with it as much as I used to, but from talking to our staff, there is a lot more, again, transparency and availability to have an inspector. You're not given those windows that we used to be given before, which is we'll be there sometime between 8 o'clock in the morning and 1 o'clock in the afternoon,
Right.
and you're spending good part of the day just
Right, and
hoping the inspector shows
clients
up.
can get upset because
Yeah.
they're waiting as
Yeah.
well, and the contractor's waiting. Sometimes the architect.
Whereas
So there was downtime in between, um, but that's evolving. It continues to evolve. I think that we heard some stuff today when we were at the zoning advisory council about the building department trying to increase the amount of inspections that'll be done annually by getting more staff. Clearly, having uh, sites that are safe is a big part of what we talk about every day here at Design, because contractors call us about meeting all of the criteria to keep sites safe. I think the building department's done an excellent job of that, of being able to implement the rules, getting it out there, using social media and digital media to show the contractors and the subcontractors how important safety is. I mean, that's a big part of what's going on today. I mean, we have a lot of unfortunate construction accidents,
unfortunately.
and they do happen. But I think the building department's done a good job to reacting to that and promoting it in so many different ways for for a for a construction worker to find a place to read about it or see it, whether it's in different languages, in different social media. The building department's on LinkedIn, they're on Instagram, they're on Twitter now. So everyone can see it, and I think that's really helped a lot in terms of educating the construction worker
Yeah,
and getting information out.
yeah, the platform that the building department has in their website is actually very informative. It's sometimes a little hard to manage and to
Navigate.
maneuver. Uh, yeah, but there's a lot of information in there that is. Sometimes I start looking at stuff and I go into a rabbit hole and start reading
Right.
things and rulings that have been
Again,
put in
we're going
place.
back to the same
And
word that we
yeah,
started this at the beginning: transparency.
yeah,
That the building department is putting out, dialogue, things for people to read, things for people to understand how important safety is, how important the rule changes are. You know, the building department is evolving. You know, right now the fire department is evolving. They just came out with a memo that you could do some small fire alarm applications via a self-certification process, which, 30 years ago we would have never thought would have been possible, but here we are today, and it's about cutting down downtime, streamlining things, making things more efficient. So here we are. Fire department now is going through a self-certification process for, branches off a main fire alarm system. I think that's progress. I think that they're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, all these steps that the agencies take at the end of the day help the construction industry. Number one, to get the projects done faster, and number two, to get them in a um, good budget. Because time, at the end of the day, when it comes to construction, is money.
Oh, no doubt.
And you know, that's where our clients sometimes are concerned with because they have a lot of things going on in their projects
Right.
that not just getting it finished, but meeting that deadline because they're playing interest rates on projects,
Sure.
and
Sure. And when they finish their building, they want to get their TCO. They want to get their occupants in, especially for us, since we do a lot of non, non-for-profit work uh, that provide affordable housing. They finish a project. They need to get the people into the building, and they finish. But if they're losing time to get their TCO, the building could be done, and they could lose a month or two trying to wrap up the paperwork. So I think that the building department has acknowledged that, and they've done a much better job with it. And kudos to them. Because
yeah.
it's especially in times of in times like this where we need affordable housing and we need shelters, that there's the ability to get the buildings done. They've invested the money, they've got the building done, the TCO can get issued, and the occupants can move in and utilize the social services that they need. And I think that's
Nobody
really,
wants to
really,
be sitting on a finished product that they can't use.
oh, without a doubt.
That applies to not only construction, just to anything. It's
Without a
that's
doubt.
the end goal for most of these construction projects too. And it's always a pleasure doing what we do to see and help a project from the very early concept of taking a piece of real estate and bringing it to
Watching it get
fruition and
developed.
watching it get done.
Without a doubt.
It's a pleasure and to be able to be part of that in this industry that it has afforded us to be able to say that, hey, I was
I was part of that.
influential to
Right.
to do that, change the skyline in some areas.
Yeah, I mean, back a bunch of episodes ago, when Fran interviewed me from Why Not You Media, part of it is he saw our firm as being part of history, that we would walk around Brooklyn and Manhattan and say, well, we worked on that building. Oh, well, we reviewed the egress for that place of assembly, or we were instrumental in getting that egress done in that particular building. So yes, it is rewarding to see projects start from a concept and get all the way through the entire process, and then eventually get their certificate of occupancy. Um, and here we are. We're here now in 2023. We've been through COVID. Um, Everybody thought that the faucet would just get wide open and we'd all be flooded with work. But obviously, you and I spend a lot of time together networking and going to different seminars. That doesn't seem to be the case. Um, we've hit a little bit of a wall with the market. So today, the conversation a lot of us are having is talking about office to residential conversions. So if you want to spend a few minutes to give us your thoughts on that, it seems to be the hot topic of the year so far. That offices in Midtown all the way to downtown, mostly in Manhattan, are going to get converted from offices to residential. Today we talked to Andrew Peters about what's it going to cost, and he's in the estimating world, and he gave us his opinion. You've been to a bunch of seminars. Tell me what you think about it.
It's definitely a approach that the city has to take to help with the lack of housing, affordable housing for the most part. But it's a challenge because to take these buildings and convert them to a residential use, it's going to take a lot of major construction, um, restructuring the entire building to, in some cases, have a court inside the building to meet the light and air requirements and the
Yeah, we talked about previously that the elevators won't comply because they were commercial elevators, not residential area elevators. So in the new code, you're not going to be able to use those. So you have to pull those out, or you're going to have to make the shafts bigger. How do all these things of taking a building that was built in the 70s or the 80s or maybe even the 60s and now make it a 2022 compliant building for residential when the original building was designed and used for commercial?
Yeah, it's dollars and cents at the end of the day.
100%.
An investment of that magnitude that the developer is looking to get a return on their
Absolutely.
time, and a lot of that also has to do with the help they may come from the government. I mean, the other thing everybody's talking about, what's happening with um, I just lost it.
That's right.
uh,
421A.
421A. What's happening with that?
Correct.
Most of the major developments that have been done over the years have been on the back of subsidies.
Correct. For the tax incentives through the 421A.
Yeah, and
Right. Getting back to the office to residential conversion, we were at the seminar today for the Zoning Advisory Council, and the borough president talked about that this is a big push. They think it's a great idea. But the downside to it is that it's not going to provide affordable housing because there's no incentive there for you to convert the building from a office to residential. There's no incentive to provide affordable housing. Probably most of them are going to be market rate luxury rentals or
Yeah.
condominiums. So part of what I think the future has to hold is that there needs to be some incentives that when they convert these buildings, that a portion of it, like the 421A, that there's tax incentives for them to give back some units for affordable as well as creating the market rate. So that's kind of the rumbling we're hearing, and I'm curious if that's kind of what you heard as well. That the good news is that there'll be apartments coming. The bad news is that there won't be any for affordable.
Yeah, that's the what I'm hearing out there for the most part. Until there's the subsidies to be able to um, make the numbers work, um, they're going to be for market
Yeah,
development.
yeah. I mean, that's what we're hearing too. That's some of our prior episodes talk about that as well. Is that until they incentivize it, and plus, we talked about this before with other guests, which is you know Article 7B of the multiple dwelling law. It's a law that's a state law that's been around a very long time. It needs to be adopted now to meet this new wave of construction that's going to be happening in New York City. So, you and I used that book back in the late 80s and early 90s, and now we're almost 30 something years later, and we're still using the same book without a lot of revisions to it. So, part of what you were talking about was making the core and doing certain things. I think that part of the Article 7B conversion laws is going to get amended to meet this new
It has
influx
to.
of construction.
It has to, and it's not only that. It's also there are antiquated laws within the zoning resolution
Correct.
that they're looking to work. I mean, one of the things that I heard in the past couple of days, is the whole issue about eliminating the 12 FAR
Right. We heard
cap.
that today also. Yeah, there
It's,
was a cap, and there was a very interesting point today that I don't want to misquote who said it, but if you go along Central Park and you look at all those iconic buildings that have been in movies, that have been, the fabric of the backdrop of Central Park, none of those buildings could be built today because they all far exceeded the 12 FAR that went into place in 1961. So everything that was older, today you couldn't even put those buildings back. as of right.
Yeah.
So there it seems like we went from having these beautiful, iconic, larger buildings, and then when zoning came in, it actually dropped the density down that they're not as big. And I think that they're starting to revisit that. That's what we were told today, and I think that that's big. You know,
Yeah, and it's unfortunately that's something that's at the state level. It's not at the city level.
correct.
It's a state mandate. Hopefully,
Which was
they'll
very
make this.
interesting. I never knew that
Neither
the
did I.
max FAR came from the state, not from the city of New York, which was and and that's what Ivan. As we get towards the end of the podcast now, what's incredible to me is that you could be in this business like you and I. We've been in together for 37 years and we've worked side by side, and we could still go to a seminar today or a breakfast where someone speaks and you learn something new about our city. You learn something new about our state. You learn something new about zoning. You learn something new about a code. And it's amazing that I would have never thought that the max FAR was really governed by the state. I always thought it was adopted by the
Yeah,
city.
same here, and hopefully there'll be changes to that. They should let the city control its destiny as how
Well,
they're doing it,
and
and
again,
what communities are going to be shaped like.
correct.
You know, it'll be interesting to see what
Yeah,
happens.
I mean, some of the concepts that have been kicked around is that anywhere where you're by a wide street and there's a train station and there's a place where people want to be, the density should be higher. And I agree with that in my opinion because you have the means to accommodate it. There'll be commercial for the supermarket and there'll be your local deli and there'll be your local pizza shop or your local diner, and yet you'll have the density because the train is there or the transportation's there that people would want to be there, so you're limiting them in some of those places to a 4-story building where maybe we can go 6 or 7 stories and get more units and make that part of the affordable package.
Right, and also there's a discussion out there, and there's some cases where you're starting to see how the planning is changing, or what we traditionally know, how we are used to living. You no longer have an area where basically you live, and a different area where you work, because of telecommuting.
Right.
People are working at home, and believe it or not, people want to leave their homes and come into the office
A couple of days.
one
Yeah.
or two times a day. But what they don't want to do is have a long commute.
Right.
So what's being created is these pockets of neighborhoods that have mixed use, where you have an office area, not a large office, but a flex office scenario
Correct.
where people
Which is
are
a
gonna
different
come in.
concept. Right,
And
because
it's
the
a
way it always was is you were in Midtown and you were in a big office, and now little small flex offices are popping up in the Bronx along the Grand Concourse. They're popping up in Long Island City. They're popping up in Williamsburg. So it's not just, oh, okay, well, Williamsburg, we've been here since it started, and at the beginning it was just all residential, all residential. Now all of the smaller buildings have some offices in them. They have retail in them because they need to support the neighborhood. If it was all residential, then the zoning wouldn't work, right? So, we talked about this in Midtown Manhattan. So you're going to do office to residential south of 59th Street. Well, where do the children go to school? Where are the supermarkets? Where does zoning get, how do they adapt zoning to take this influx of density now?
it's a challenge of city planning.
A hundred
It's
percent.
master planning that people are working on and coming up with ideas, because things are changing. Or
Oh,
they've
no doubt.
changed.
No doubt. And that's really why I invited you on the show, just to give us a little glimpse of where we were, where we are today, and how the DOB has been able to continue to evolve through administration after administration, and that's another part that I give them a lot of credit, because from one mayor to the next, things change. The continuity sometimes is only there for 4 years, sometimes it's there for 8 years. But at the end of the day, it keeps evolving, it keeps changing. Here we are today with DOB Now. no more, a lot more flexibility, a lot more transparency, and they've committed to it. And I think that they've done a really good job. And I think as we go forward, it will continue to evolve as it should. It has to organically grow depending on what's going on in New York City. But thank you. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for giving us a
having me.
little bit of history. And thank you for all your dedication here at Design.